Chapter 17, A Change of Heart. Frank, unpredictable to the end, had decided to see me. Signor Danvilla brought the good news to the Club Nautico, certain that a breakthrough of importance had taken place. He was waiting for me in the lobby as I returned from the swimming pool and seemed unsurprised when I failed to recognize him against the background of English sporting prints. "Mr. Prentice, is there a problem?" "No, Signor Danvilla," taking off my sunglasses. I identified the harassed figure with his perpetually shuffled briefcases. "Can I help you?" "It's an urgent matter concerning your brother. I heard this morning that he will now receive you." "Good. Mr. Prentice," the lawyer followed me to the elevator and placed his hand over the call button. "Can you understand me? You may visit your brother. He's agreed to see you." "That's wonderful. Do you know why he's changed his mind?" "It doesn't matter. It's important that you meet him. He may have something to tell you. Perhaps some new evidence about the case." "Of course, it's excellent news. He's probably had time to think everything over." Exactly. For all his air of a dogged but tired schoolmaster, Danvilla was watching me with unexpected shrewdness. "Mr. Prentice, when you see your brother, give him time to speak for himself. The visiting hour is 4:30 this afternoon. He asked you to bring Dr. Hamilton." "That's even better. I'll call her at the clinic. I know she's very keen to talk to him. What about the trial? Will this affect it?" "If he withdraws his confession, I will petition the court in Marbella." "Everything depends on your meeting this afternoon. It's necessary to be gentle, Mr. Prentice." We arranged to rendezvous in the visitor's car park at the prison. I walked Danvilla to his car, and as he stowed his briefcases in the passenger seat, I took from the pocket of my toweling robe the set of keys I had found in the lemon orchard. I tested them against the door lock and, as I assumed, saw that they failed to fit. But Danvilla had noticed the shift in my eyes. "Mr. Prentice, are you enjoying your stay in Estrella de Mar?" "Not exactly, but it's a place of great charm. It even has a certain magic." "Magic, yes." Danvilla held the steering wheel, restraining it from any rash behavior. "You begin to look like your brother." I returned to Frank's apartment, trying to guess at the significance of his decision. By refusing to see me or any of his friends and colleagues at the Club Nautico, he had drawn a line under the case, accepting the blame for the Hollingers' deaths in the way a government minister might resign after the misconduct of a subordinate. At the same time, he was shielding me from any memories of the remorse we had shared after our mother's death. We had tried too hard to keep her alive, steadying her on the staircase and sweeping up the glass of the shattered whiskey tumblers on the bathroom floor. I felt a rush of affection for Frank, remembering the determined 8-year-old polishing the smeary cutlery in the kitchen drawers. Only now could I accept that this stricken, lonely woman had probably not even noticed her young sons and had been scarcely more aware of herself, staring into the mirrors around the house as if trying to remember her own reflection. Curiously, at Estrella de Mar, any residues of remorse had almost vanished, evaporating in the benevolent sunlight like the morning mists over the swimming pools. I rang Paula's answering machine at the clinic and arranged to lunch with her at the Club Nautico before our drive to Malaga. After my shower, I stood on the balcony and watched the tennis players knocking up at the courts, as always devotedly supervised by Bobby Crawford. Frank's tennis rackets lay in the equipment cupboard, and I was tempted to set out for the courts and challenge Crawford to a set. He would easily beat me, but I was curious to know by what margin. There would be the first stinging aces and a high kicker aimed at my head. But then he would lower his game, losing a few points as he drew me deeper into the rivalry between us. If I deliberately fumbled my own play, he might leave me with too great a lead and be tempted into one or two reckless net rushes. In the car park, his Porsche sat in the center of the black-rimmed halo that the burning Renault had seared into the asphalt. Crawford always parked here, either to remind me of the blaze or in some perverse show of solidarity. Earlier that morning, I had tested the lost car keys in the Porsche's door locks. Looking down at the back numbers of The Economist, the carton of Turkish cigarettes, and the amber-lensed aviator glasses on the glove shelf, I felt a sharp sense of relief when the keys failed to match. While I waited for Paula, I packed a fresh set of clothes for Frank. Searching the wardrobe for clean shirts, I came across the lace shawl passed on to us by our grandmother. The yellowing fabric lay like a shroud among the mohair sweaters, and I remembered placing the shawl around my mother's shoulders as she sat at her dressing table, and how the scent of her skin blended so inseparably with the tang of whiskey. Paula's BMW turned into the car park and stopped beside the Porsche. Recognizing the sports car, she pinched her nose in a show of irritation and backed away into another space. She took an orange from a hamper of fruit on the passenger seat, stepped from the car and strode briskly to the entrance. As always, I was delighted to see her. In her white trouser suit and high heels, silk scarf floating from her throat, she looked less like a doctor than one of the style-setting yacht guests at Puerto Banús. "Paula, is that you? It better be." She closed the apartment door behind her and stepped onto the balcony. Lightly tossing the orange in one hand, she pointed to the circle of scorched asphalt. "I wish they'd clear that up." "Have a word with David Hennessy. Thank God you weren't inside the car." "I was sound asleep. It was after midnight." "You might have been dozing off at the wheel or spying on a copulating couple. Some people like having sex in cars, though heaven knows why." She lobbed the orange to me and leaned against the rail. "So how are you? For someone who's been attacked by hang gliders and half strangled to death, you look remarkably well." "I am. I feel almost lightheaded. It's the thought of seeing Frank." "Of course it is." Smiling, she walked up to me and embraced my shoulders, pressing her cheek against mine. "We've worried ourselves sick over the poor man. At last we'll know what's been going on inside his head." "Let's hope so. Something must have changed his mind, though heaven knows what." "Does it matter?" She ran her fingers over the bruises on my neck. "The main thing is that we're making contact. You do want to see Frank." "Absolutely. It's just that I'm not sure what to say to him. It's so out of the blue and may not mean all that much. Cabrera will have told him about the attacks on me. I dare say Frank wants me to go back to London." "And you? Do you want to go back?" "Not exactly. Estrella de Mar is a lot more interesting than I thought at first. Besides, the tennis school had broken up for lunch and the players were making their way back to the changing rooms." Crawford moved around the silent serving machine, returning the scattered balls to the hopper. He sprinted after the players, challenging them to race him back to the showers. Admiring his energy, I was about to wave to him, but Paula held my elbow. "Charles, what is it? Control yourself. You're more concerned with Bobby Crawford than you are with your own brother." "That's not true." I followed Paula into the bedroom, where she began to repack the case filled with Frank's clothes. "But Crawford is interesting. He and Estrella de Mar are the same thing. I talked to Sanger the other day. He thinks we're the prototype of all the leisure communities of the future." "And you agree with him?" "I may do. He's an odd man with his taste for young girls that he tries to hide from himself. But he's very shrewd. According to him, the engine that drives Estrella de Mar is crime. Crime and what Sanger calls transgressive behavior." "You're not surprised, Paula?" She shrugged and closed the catches of the suitcase. "No one ever reports any crime." And that's the most perfect crime of all, when the victims are either willing or aren't aware that they are victims. And Frank is one of those victims? Perhaps. There's a very curious logic at work here. My guess is that Frank was aware of it. "You can ask him yourself this afternoon. Get changed and we'll have lunch." She stood by the door, waiting as I took my passport and wallet from the bureau drawer and counted out 21,000 peseta notes. "What are those for? Don't tell me David Hennessy charges you for lunch." "Not yet. They're to soften the palm of any prison official who might be of help to Frank." I'd call them a bribe, but that sounds too ungenerous. "Good. Paula nodded approvingly as she retied her scarf and adjusted her cleavage in the mirror. Don't forget your car keys. They're a spare set. The keys that I had found in the orchard lay on the bureau. I had said nothing to Paula about them, deciding to wait until I had tested them again against the locks of her BMW. Paula, what is it? You're flitting about like a moth around a flame. She came up to me, inspecting my pupils. Have you taken something? Not the sort of thing you mean. I turned to face her. Look, I'm not sure I can cope with Frank this afternoon. Why not, Charles? You go on alone. Believe me, it's not the right day. Too much has happened. But he asked for you, Paula tried to read my face. What on earth can I tell him? He'll be shocked when he hears that you've refused to come. He won't. I know Frank. He made his decision to plead guilty and nothing will change that. Something new may have cropped up. What do I say to Cabrera? You're not going to leave Estrella de Mar. No, I put my hands on her shoulders to calm her. Look, I want to see Frank, but not today. And not to talk about the trial. All that has slipped to the back of my mind. There are other things I have to do here. Things that involve Bobby Crawford? I suppose so. He's the key to everything. Getting closer to Bobby Crawford is the only way I can help Frank. Not going to Zarzula jail. All right, she relaxed and placed her hands over mine. Her overprompt agreement made me sense that she was following a route of her own. She was leading me through the outer corridors of a maze, guiding me to another door whenever I seemed to falter. She waited as I stared at her breasts, deliberately exposed by the low lapels of her jacket. Paula, you're too glamorous for those prison guards. I moved the lapels together. Or is this how you keep your elderly patients going? The breasts are for Frank. I wanted to cheer him up. Do you think they'll work? I'm sure they will. If you're not certain, you could always test them first on someone else. A sort of trial run? Maybe. But where could I do that? The clinic? That wouldn't be ethical. I hate being ethical. Still, it's an idea. I pushed Frank's case across the bed and sat beside it. Paula stood in front of me, hands on my shoulders, watching as I unbuttoned her jacket. I felt the mattress yield under my weight and imagined Frank undressing this handsome young doctor, his hands between her thighs as mine were now. The regret I felt at taking advantage of Frank's absence and having sex with his former lover on his own bed was eased by the thought that I had begun to replace him in Estrella de Mar. I had never seen Frank make love, but I guessed that he had kissed Paula's hips and navel as I did, running my tongue around its knotted crater with its scent of oysters. What a que libro. As if she had come to me naked from the sea. He had raised her breasts and kissed the moist skin still bruised by the wired cups of her brassiere. He had drawn out her nipples between his lips. I pressed my cheeks to her pubis, inhaling the same heady scent that Frank had drawn through his nostrils, parting the silky labia that he had touched 100 times. Jesus, what the hell happened to this book? However briefly I'd known Paula, my brother's months of intimacy with her body seemed to welcome me to her, urging me on as I caressed her vulva and felt the scent glands around her anus. What the fuck? I kissed her knees and then drew her to the bed, pressing my tongue to her armpits and tasting the sweet gullies with their soft underdown, feeling not only lust but an almost fraternal affection for her. My imagined memories of her embracing Frank, I held her to my chest. Paula, she cupped her palm over my mouth. No, don't say you love me. You'll spoil it. Here, Frank liked my left nipple. What the fuck? She raised the breast and pressed it to my mouth, smiling at me like an intelligent 8-year-old conducting an experiment with a younger sibling. Her own pleasure was an emotion she observed from a distance, as if she and I were strangers who had agreed to an hour's practice at the nets. Yet as I lay between her legs, her knees against my shoulders, she watched me come with the first real warmth for me that I had seen her express. She pulled me into her arms and embraced me tightly, hands at first searching for Frank's bones, but then happy to hold me. Taking my penis in one hand, she began to masturbate herself, eyes fixed on my still leaking glands, forefinger parting her labia. Jesus. Paula, let me... I tried to slip my hand below hers, but she pushed me away. No, I'll come more quickly on my own. When she came, she stiffened fiercely, hand pressed against her furrow, then allowed herself to breathe. She kissed me on the mouth and nestled against me, glad to put aside the cynicism she showed to the world. Fond of her, I ran a finger lightly along her lips and drew a sleepy smile onto her mouth, but she stopped me when I placed my hand on her pubis. No, not now. Paula, why can't I stroke you? Later. It's my Pandora's box. Open it, and all the ills of Dr. Hamilton might escape. Ills? Are there any? I bet Frank didn't believe that. I took her palm and held her fingers to my nose, inhaling the rose-damp scent of her vulva. For the first time, I really envy him. Frank's very sweet. Not as romantic as you, though. Really? That amazes me. I thought he was the romantic one. What about you, Paula? Was it a good idea to become a doctor? I never had much choice. With a fingertip, she gently touched the bruises on my neck. At 14, I already knew that I had to be just like my aunt. I did think of becoming a man. I did think of becoming a nun. For religious reasons? No, sexual. All those masturbating sisters mind-fucking Jesus. What could be more erotic? I was such a mess when my mother left us. There were all those emotions I couldn't control. So much hate and anger. My aunt showed me the way out. She was so realistic about people. No one ever hurt or surprised her. Medicine was the best training for all that.